I'm Dylan.
And I'm Keon.
And this is Trust Your Doctor, that podcast where we force our enemies to play video games. Because this week we listen to The Nightmare Fae.
Written by Graham Williams.
Directed by John Ainsworth.
And released in November 2009. With music by Jamie McCrimmon. No.
Jamie Robertson. Jamie Robertson. Jamie Robertson's one of Big Finish's longest running incidental music composers. And he does a version of the Eighth Doctor's theme for these 3 stories where he travels with Mary Shelley, and it's a pretty good theme. Has an electric guitar, which is unique at the time for a Doctor Who theme.
Yeah, that really fits, Mary Shelley in her time period. It's electric instruments.
I mean, why not, right?
So yeah, apparently this was adapted by
John Ainsworth, the director.
Because this was originally a story from season 23? Yeah.
And Graham Williams, obviously the former producer of the show at that point. He was a producer with... he had 1 season with Robert Holmes, and then he had the Anthony Root season, then he had the Douglas Adams season. And then he wrote this for when Doctor Who was going to have a 23rd season immediately after the 22nd season, but then it got cancelled, and then we got Trial of a Time Lord. So
they never brought the toy maker back.
Still haven't on the TV show, by the way.
Well, I mean, if this is any indication of how they're going to bring him back, maybe that's a good thing. He was kind of underwhelming in this.
Yeah, and I'm kind of bummed because I chose this because I still think the Celestial Toymaker is one of my favorite villains in concept, and that if somebody did a really good story with him, it'd be probably fantastic, but they just haven't. I guess of the ones we've seen and listened to, which is 2.
Well, the first one was pretty good, but part of, I guess, why I didn't like this one is, I guess, expectations, and it's been 3 years since we've watched a Toymaker serial. Or anything Toymaker related, so I guess my expectations just got way too high, and he doesn't really do many cool things with his games in this, honestly.
Yeah, they didn't really utilize that aspect of his character a lot in the serial. I mean, it was his main motivation, I guess, but they didn't really do anything interesting with it.
Yeah, because, back in the first Doctor era, they were playing games pretty much nonstop for that entire thing, so I was kind of expecting something like that, which I guess it's okay that they didn't go in that direction, but, I don't know.
Yeah, and maybe some of that comes from having to adapt it to audio, and they cut out a lot of things.
Come to think of it, if you think of the games they played way back when, I forgot what season that was, 2?
Yeah, 1 or 2. It was one of the first 2 seasons. It was
sure it was 2.
Dodo and Steven, so it must have been 2.
Yeah. I guess it would. If that story itself weren't audio, a lot of the games would be pretty hard to grasp, I guess. But anyway, you can still do something with it, but they didn't. So
yeah.
Whatever.
So yeah, this is part of a range of stories of lost stories. Where the first season they did of these was mostly scripts for season 23. There was one that they just couldn't work out an arrangement with the guy who wrote it. That doesn't appear. And then the second season, I think, is scripts or from ideas that were floating around for season 27 that obviously didn't get made because the show was canceled. And then some of the later ones, they just kind of find some old stories and do them. They found one that was originally going to be the second serial of the entire show instead of the Daleks, but it got scrapped in favor of the Daleks, so they ended up making that. And
wow, that's pretty interesting.
They did one it's basically Genesis of the Ice Warriors with the second Doctor and Jamie and
Genesis of the Daleks
Zoe.
Was one of the best stories, so
yeah,
this probably will be too.
Written by the guy who wrote or introduced the Ice Warriors, so
yeah.
It was called Lords of the Red Planet, which I haven't listened to, obviously. And then they also did one which seems interesting with the second Doctor and a character called Hecuba, Queen of Time, who is revealed to be the Celestial Toymaker's sister.
Spoiler alert.
Because she's a great old one. And I guess her shtick is she likes to play with clocks and time, whereas the Toymaker likes to play games. So that could be interesting, although Who knows, I suppose. Yeah, according to the interviews for this, it went through a pretty long process to actually get made because the producer for this range had the idea as soon as he got hired at Big Finish, but he didn't want to bring it up as soon as he got hired because he didn't want everybody to think he was kind of crazy for wanting to resurrect these lost stories. But they did the adaptations of the stage plays and were pretty successful with that, so that's why they decided to go ahead with this. Colin Baker mentions that this was the only script from season 23 that he actually read in when it was going to be made. The other ones' scripts existed in some form, but this is the only one that Colin mentions he actually saw and read through, but he doesn't remember a lot of the things about it, and he doesn't remember, kind of what was changed because he doesn't remember the script.
Yeah, I didn't listen. They had 30 minutes of interviews at the end of this. So I didn't listen to those, partly because of time and partly because, I don't know, I just usually don't like listening to interviews and stuff like right after I watch or listen to the thing. Because, I don't know, it taints it somehow to me, my opinion. Also, it's like really easy to fall, like right after you watch / listen to whatever it is, it's really easy to fall into the trap of like way overvaluing authorial intent, which is a bad thing to me, but hey, that's another discussion probably for never on this podcast, but hey, maybe, I don't know. But anyway, it starts with a toy maker monologue kind of thing, I guess. I don't really remember.
Yeah, the toy maker kind of explains to his lackey, I guess.
Yeah, he had a couple subordinates in this, none of which were really interesting.
Well, except the one guy who's been alive for 200 years because he lost a game of checkers 200 years ago.
Yeah, I should also mention last week how I was like, oh man, I really hope I stopped reading during these, and I did stop that. I started writing while listening to them, which was even worse. So, yeah. Anyway.
Jeez. Yeah, and then we get the Doctor and Perry, and they land in Blackpool. Like we mentioned at the end of season 22, they cut off the cliffhanger in the middle of Colin Baker saying Blackpool because it was going to lead directly into this story.
Yeah, they Doctor hadn't won tickets to Disneyland at this point, so they couldn't go. No, okay.
Well, Perry's like, we should go to Disneyland, and the Doc's like, give it 100 years to settle.
I guess that means it's still not settled. So I guess we've been experiencing a lesser Disneyland experience.
Inferior product. I didn't actually know what Blackpool was till I went and looked it up for the story, and it turns out it's like an amusement park / seaside resort area of England.
Yeah, I didn't look it up. I just got that it was like an amusement park or, fair, because it's called the Nightmare Fair. So, yeah.
Well, interestingly, the Wikipedia page talks about the quote-unquote regeneration of Blackpool when they like revamped the entire thing. It was like, regeneration, such a weird word to choose for that.
Yeah, especially on a Doctor Who wiki. Have you seen those abandoned amusement parks, like the most famous ones in Japan, I think? But like,
yeah.
I don't know, there's plenty of articles about ones worldwide, and they're pretty dang creepy.
Pretty cool also, though. I mean, for me, the most interesting one was always that one in New Orleans that got abandoned like right after Hurricane Katrina.
Huh.
And then it's Six Flags, and they left all the rides just standing there, and you can see it just get overgrown with foliage as you look at it over the years, which is kind of cool. I think they've dismantled a substantial portion of it now, but
yeah, sort of a dystopian future enclosed within the area of a former amusement park.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. Actually, this is completely unrelated, but I just learned about, have you heard of Kowloon or whatever it's called? The walled city in Hong Kong? Oh, you gotta look that up. It's crazy. It doesn't exist anymore. They tore it down, but it's basically like a 700 by 500 foot area with like 35,000 people living in it.
Jeez.
Yeah.
That's a pretty high population density.
Yeah. It's like skyscraper tall, just shacks stacked on top of each other. Super, obviously incredibly poor living conditions. But anyway, that's not related to this at all. I just learned about that like last week, so it was pretty cool.
I mean, that sounds like it was the inspiration for all those massive cities of people in, I think it's Judge Dredd.
It's been the inspiration for, I don't know what that is, but it's been the inspiration for like tons of cyberpunk and post-apocalyptic things. Because like the bottom floor of it is like, there's like no sunlight unless you're on the top.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds kind of cool. I mean, it would
I know.
suck to live there,
I
but it
know.
sounds kind of cool.
I know. I was looking at pictures and like, oh man, I really wish this wasn't torn down so I could visit it. But anyway,
Sounds like a good setting for a Doctor Who story, to be honest. Kind of like Paradise Towers, now that I think about it.
yeah, ish, I guess. Anyway,
So the Doctor and Perry now proceed to spend most of part one just riding rods.
yeah, the Doctor eats some cotton candy, which I didn't get that it was cotton candy until like 15 minutes later because they call it candy floss, which is I guess is the British term for it. And then like 10 to 15 minutes later, it's like, oh wait, that was cotton candy.
You did the Perry thing. Yeah, in part two, Perry takes 10 minutes to figure out what the Doctor's saying, even though he makes it really obvious what he means. He practically just says what he means, and Perry, like, really overinterprets it. Listening to the interviews was also interesting because you could hear Nicola Bryant in her native British accent, which was a little bit, I
Which
guess,
is only slightly different than how she does it on the show. No,
yeah.
okay, no.
Well, so it was a little bit strange because I'm so used to hearing her with the American accent, but
I think she did. Maybe it's just because the audio quality was way better than the TV episodes, obviously. But I thought she did a really good job doing this American accent, like way better than she'd ever done on the show.
well, I mean, when they recorded this, she must have been doing it for a solid 20 years now.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know.
And I guess the good thing about audios compared to TV show, another thing that I guess we haven't mentioned, is that you can do a lot more takes on an audio drama than on a TV show, because like videotape is, back in the day when they were filming the show, was pretty expensive, which is kind of why they couldn't do a lot of takes. But like audio, it all comes down to how much storage space you have and how much money you have to rent the studio you're in.
Yeah.
So the Doctor and Perry ride the rides, and then we cut to the toy maker.
Laughing maniacally. There's a really cool laugh in part one. I think it's near the beginning, but I thought it was one of the best laughs in Doctor Who. It's like a maniacal toy maker laugh.
I actually thought David Bailey overall was probably one of the best actors, at least in this audio for sure.
Yeah, he was really
potentially
good.
on the show. And he was actually in Robots of Death. I didn't know that till I listened to the interviews.
Yeah, he was, what's his face? The robot dude.
Yeah.
The main guy. R84 or something. I don't know. Whatever they named him to mimic Star Wars.
Apparently, if they had, when this is being made in 82, or, no, it would have been like 80. I don't really know, to be honest. But anyway, when it was being made, 86?
Would have been later. No, it would have been later than that. It would have been like mid to late 80s.
Season 23, 86-ish. Apparently they'd actually signed up Michael Gough to reprise his role as the Celestial Toymaker, because he played him originally. But by the time they were doing the audio, Michael Gough was, one, kind of old, and two, didn't really want to do it.
So they got this guy instead. Yeah, I guess you could argue that maybe he's overplaying it. I don't know, compared to how the Toymaker used to be, but
maybe a little. In the interviews,
I wouldn't argue that, because I liked his performance.
In the interviews, David Bailey and John Ainsworth mentioned that David Bailey didn't watch any of the original serial to prepare for the role, because they wanted him to kind of play it how he thought he wanted to play it, instead of trying to do an imitation of Michael Gough.
Yeah.
So it cuts to the Toymaker laughing, and then it cuts back to the Doctor and Perry screaming, and you're like, oh boy, what's happened? And they're just riding a roller coaster.
Yeah.
The Doctor mentions the most fun he's ever had. He's like ridden supernova explosions, and yet the most fun he's had is some roller coaster in Blackpool in 1984. Kind of makes you either question like how exciting those supernova explosions are, or
make you want to go to Blackpool.
Yeah, make you want to go to Blackpool.
I wonder if I actually haven't seen any pictures of it, because again, I didn't look it up, but I wonder if it's like one of those super rickety, looks like it's going to fall apart any minute roller coasters or whatever, which are apparently the best ones. I mean, obviously living in Southern California, I know we have the most not up to date, but like our theme parks are like Disneyland and Six Flags SoCal. Six Flags, whatever we have, Magic Mountain. So those are like the super nice ones or whatever. We also have knots, but so
Yeah, well, I was gonna say if you want rickety roller coasters, you just go to Knott's and you ride Ghost Rider.
oh god, the one that's closed every other week.
I've ridden Ghost Rider. It's very
Sketch.
It's very sketchy because the entire time you're shaking. Like if you're on a steel roller coaster, pretty smooth ride. Ghost Rider feels like the coaster's gonna fall apart every time you go around a corner.
And there's what's Montezuma's Revenge, where it's like a complete loop, and you feel like you're just gonna go flying. The only one they actually keep nice there is Accelerator, which is kind of overrated, but whatever.
It's one of the fastest roller coasters. Well, not anymore. It was when it was built.
Yeah, it's like 90 miles an hour, I think.
Yeah, I think it's
like an almost
in the top
90-degree
10.
drop near the beginning.
Yeah, it basically shoots you straight upwards and you come straight back downwards.
Yeah.
I know at Blackpool they have a tower. I don't know if the tower's a ride or not, but there's Blackpool Tower.
Would you describe this tower as using terms like Hollywood and terror? Okay, no.
No, I would describe it using Eiffel and more steel.
Oh, the Blackwood Eiffel Tower of More Steel. That famous theme park ride. Anyway.
Rip the Tower of Terror.
Oh yeah, they don't have that anymore.
Well, no, the ride is still there. They just rethemed it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, same ride. It's just Guardians of the Galaxy theme now.
Wow. I don't know why, but that somehow makes it a lot worse.
Okay, the design looks pretty cool
seen
on
it.
the outside, but anyway. Back to Blackpool. We should do an amusement park podcast.
Yeah, it would be pretty funny because we're not amusement park experts. So kind of like this
Kind of
show,
like
how
this
we're not
show.
Doctor Who experts. We've learned a lot in 3 years. Well, a lot in quotes, but
We have a bachelor's degree in Doctor Who. So the Doctor and Perry...
they get on this other ride and the ride operators are acting pretty weird.
Yeah, they separate the Doctor and Perry. Perry gets put in the cart and the Doctor's like, no, there's still space in that cart.
Yeah, there's someone tailing them we forgot to mention. The Doctor's like, don't look now, but I think there's someone following us.
It's
Perry
pretty much,
looks now.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, it's pretty much the best way to get a person to look at the person. There's also a scene of a guy who goes to a policeman and tries to complain.
Because he's seen something weird. He's a character in a Lovecraft story. Nobody believes.
He's seen the Mandarin.
Yeah, that was weird. There's a lot of vaguely, like, just slightly racist lines in this, I guess, calling back to its 1980s roots, especially later where the doctor calls Welsh like an inferior language. Did you notice that?
Yes. I mean, the original was also vaguely racist, too,
Yeah.
back in the 60s.
So keeping it up, good on them. No, okay, no.
I don't know if that's a good thing. Really
No,
think it's not, to be
no.
honest.
No, it's not.
So they get separated, and then maybe I missed it. Maybe I missed like 10 seconds of the audio that critically explained what happens here. But all of a sudden, Perry and the guy who was in the cart with her are underground being attacked by miners, and the Doctor's being escorted off the ride by someone else.
No, I mean, again, I was writing while listening to this, but I'm pretty sure that's what happens. They
Perfect.
somehow just take them off the ride into a sort of underground area, which I guess was supposed to be a maintenance area, but is also the Toymaker's lair, is explained later. And yeah, then the Doctor is escorted off the ride. I've actually been escorted off a ride at Disneyland.
What?
Yeah, I guess this was when I was about 10 or so, and my family was visiting from New York, so we're like, yeah, let's go to Disneyland, because they'd never been to Disneyland or whatever. So we went on Splash Mountain, right? First of all,
It's the only ride I think there that I haven't been on. But continue.
the line took like 3 hours, and we're like, wait, why is it taking so long? So we got on the ride, and it kept starting and stopping, so we're like, oh, maybe that's why it's taking so long, because the ride's freaking broken. We got up to at the end of Splash Mountain. If you don't know, there's a big splash. There's like mini splashes all throughout. This is like probably the only water ride at Disneyland, or like one of a couple. But at the end, there's like a big splash, right? And we were the next people about to go down at the final drop, and we were stopped there for like probably 30 minutes, or what 10-year-old me thought was 30 minutes, so maybe it was like 5 minutes. You know how time always feels long? Yeah, anyway. And
There's
then some
reason
guy.
for that, by the way. I read an article about it.
It's interesting. But anyway, eventually some guy just came up the steps on the side and he's like, "Hey guys, sorry, the ride just broke down. We're gonna have to escort you off." So we got to walk through the back lot of Disneyland and get free Disneyland tickets. And we saw Walt Disney's head, and it was pretty cool. No.
You saw his cryo chamber.
Yeah. No, that's what happened. So pretty disappointing there. Then again, we got free Disneyland tickets.
And then the next time you went, you
It broke down again. No.
You were at Splash Mountain, and you broke down at the bottom of the ride.
It's an infinite loop of free Disneyland tickets. No. So I feel you, Doctor. How disappointing it is to get escorted off a ride.
I feel like the doctor
Didn't care.
didn't care, because at this point we forgot to mention that he keeps hearing someone call his name. And
Yeah, he's been
it's
like
the
psychically
Toymaker,
contacted by the Toymaker. Did the Toymaker ever do that in his original appearance?
No,
think
but
so.
the Toymaker also has ill-defined powers that
Yeah.
are extremely powerful.
Especially with this sort of pseudo plot twist thing at the end of this. Kind of weird.
You mean the I am the Senate moment of the story?
Yeah.
Also, we didn't mention that Perry kind of chastised the Doctor because he was really uppity about this whole time vortexing. They'd sucked them to Blackpool, and the Doctor had been really overdramatic about it, like being enough to destroy the universe or whatever. And he's like, just kidding, we're just going to Blackpool. So
That was only in the very beginning. I don't think she keeps mentioning it.
No, she
Although
doesn't.
maybe she does.
But Perry and the Doctor get separated, and the Doctor, while getting escorted off the ride, gets taken to a jail cell. Well, it's not really a jail cell, it's kind of a cell the Toymaker's constructed in his lair for the Doctor that has walls that apparently can disappear.
Yeah, there's another cell right next to him with a guy in there, and the Doctor tries to talk to him, but he doesn't respond.
Although he does start tapping on the wall, the Doctor's tapping back. He's tapping back 3 blind mice instead of tapping back like something in Morse code, and then he seems surprised when the person on the other side doesn't know 3 blind mice, this obviously Earth-based rhythm that only humans would know.
And I mean, like, well, I guess the 7th Doctor and 2nd Doctor have some musical ability, so maybe it's not out of the question that the 6th Doctor would too. But if someone's tapping 3 blind mice, how clear is it going to be, right?
Yeah, because you can only really tap one note, right? So...
And especially, the rhythm goes like, dun, 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 dun. Sorry. Well, I mean, without the notes, are you really going to get that it's even a song? Probably not, at least at the beginning.
Yeah, I imagine... I'm imagining the monster on the other side, like, trying to decipher the Morse code the Doctor's tapping, but it's actually just 3 blind mice. I don't know why I'm assuming Morse code is also internationally known among aliens when that's another Earth-devised means of communication. Perry, on the other hand, is with...
The guy who'd been following them.
the guy named Kevin. She's with Kevin.
Oh, yeah, Kevin.
And the Toymaker's main, like,
Starbucks
accomplice...
name.
Your Starbucks. I think you're everywhere that requires names for food name.
Yeah. I don't go to Starbucks because I don't drink coffee. Also, I don't like really long lines. Like the one at Splash Mountain.
You just gotta go to the Starbucks that have the short lines.
What's really sad is at my school, there's like always more there's a Starbucks in the library because there's like 6 Starbucks on campus. Yes, really.
There's one in the library?
Yeah, there's one in the library, and there's like more people. Well, that was weird. In the Starbucks than in the library itself, which is kind of sad, but whatever.
Yeah, that is
our
kinda
library
sad.
sucks, but that's not our fault so, as students.
Anyway, so the Doctor gets taken to meet the Toymaker, and he seems only mildly surprised that it's the Toymaker. He's kind of like, "Oh, Toymaker,"
Yeah, I guess he
See
kind of
you.
figured it out based on the psychic contact that they'd been having.
and the time vortex thing, and yeah. So the Toymaker's like, "So I'm back. I'm playing games. You know, the huge.
Except I'm not to the extent that I was before.
The doctor's like, yeah, man, I'm not going to play your games no more. The toy maker's like, please. And the doctor's like, all right, we'll call it the last game. And then episode 1 ends.
Yeah, the toy maker's like, but that's not fair. And the doctor's like, yeah, it's never been fair because I've beaten you every single time.
Also, the toy maker cheats probably every single time.
So, yeah, I guess that was sort of a Sixth Doctor-ish line there, you know, super cocky and, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, Colin was trying to play it more like season 22 Sixth Doctor rather than has 10 years of Big Finish character development Sixth Doctor, because obviously this is a story from what would have been season 23 and they're trying to emulate the era.
Yeah.
They also, apparently, Jamie Robertson did the music, the director, went to Jamie and gave him all of these tapes of music from the 80s so that he would know like what kind of style of music to emulate for this. Like usually for Big Finish, they do like...
Well, like ABBA.
Yes.
And The Cure. Okay. No.
Usually for Big Finish, they do like what they do on the TV show now, which is like orchestral arrangements. But for this, they tried to emulate the style of those 80s synthesizers.
The better soundtrack style for the show.
Debatable. So, although, to be honest, I didn't actually really notice the music in this at all. So basically doing the same thing the TV show did in the 80s, except those times where I think Dominic Glynn was head composer and put all those really obnoxious Weakest Link hits in. Was that Dominic Glynn?
I don't think so.
Or was that
maybe.
the other guy?
I don't know.
Just remember the Weakest Link hits.
It was season 24 guy, whoever that was.
Might have been Kevin
I don't remember.
So, part 2 begins with the Doctor saying that again, and then he's like, but I'm not playing if you hurt Perry. And you're like, oh, well, that's a lame way to resolve that cliffhanger.
Yeah, so I guess also emulating this was originally a script, so maybe not emulating it so much as falling into the trap of it being not great that they resolved the cliffhanger within the first 5 seconds of the next episode. Really hope they don't do that crap in the reboot. But maybe I'll be sorely disappointed. I don't know.
Depends on the story and the writer, like as it did in the classic series as well. So. Yeah.
Although, I mean, I can't really think of any moments in the classic series that didn't resolve that had a cliffhanger that didn't resolve it within the first, I don't know, minute of the next episode. Yeah. Maybe it's because you remember terrible things more than acceptable things.
Well, at the same time, a lot of the cliffhangers just, oh no, the Doctor's about to die. It's not like you can drag out for an entire episode that the Doctor's about to die.
Yeah, at least not when he's in physical danger.
Yeah. So I guess out of necessity, they're resolving it in the first 5 minutes. But this cliffhanger, this cliffhanger didn't need to be resolved in the first 10 seconds of the next episode. But I
see you arrived at the inner sanctum, or whatever it was from State of Decay, which I still think is a good ending to the episode. But anyway, even though it wasn't planned to be the ending of the episode.
So, the Doctor gets sent back to the jail cell. The toy maker's like, okay, well, we'll just wait for Perry to get here, and then you can play the game. And I was like, okay.
Oh, man, I just lost the game for like the first time in several months. Anyway.
Damn it. So did I. So, yeah, the Doctor asks the guy in the jail cell with him, because someone else gets thrown in there with him. I think it's the guy who goes to the police, whatever his name was. I don't know what his name was.
He's probably Steven. I just looked at the character list. There's Kevin and Steven, the most generically named people in this, so I'm guessing it's Steven.
Well, Stefan,
whatever.
Stefan was the toy maker's assistant.
Oh,
Stefan.
Okay, never mind then.
I remember that because the toy maker kept saying, Stefan.
He also had that warlord guy, whose name I forgot.
Well, so the Doctor's talking with this guy in the jail cell with him. He's like, do you have a transducer on you? And he's like, I don't even know what that is.
No, you deuce bag. Why would I have that?
Well, he pretty much says that. The Doc's like, well, when I was your age, I used to carry transducers in my pocket all the time, and I used to make the thing I'm about to make in 5 minutes. And the guy smartly counters with, well, why don't you have one in your pocket now? The Doc's like, well, people grow up. Really, Doctor? Have they, though? Have you?
Yeah, you don't remember the parable of the flower? The Doctor's coming of age backstory?
I forgot about that.
Taken from Buddhist mythology?
Well,
Just directly copied?
a lot of this show is...
Actually, I'm not sure if that was actually the Doctor's backstory or if he was just mentioning that it was. Yeah,
making something up for
probably,
Joe, for
yeah.
Sarah Jane, sorry.
Wasn't that for Joe? I don't remember.
No, because I think he said it in his regeneration story, which would have been Sarah Jane, Planet of the Spiders.
I don't remember, honestly, but I guess it doesn't matter.
Yeah, well... And then we meet PK something, who's like a... I don't really know what he is, but the only part of him that's original is his arm. That's all I remember. Or his hand. He's like a robot now. He's been like cybernetically enhanced. He's like the original Cyberman. He chose to get enhanced instead of getting forced.
Yeah, I'm pretty vague on this character because, yeah, I guess I wasn't paying much attention.
Well, PK only exists to give the other guy his arm. The guy who can't talk, the monster thing. The monster that's going to kill the Doctor, and the Doctor just talks it down, and it's like, okay, it's my friend now. Who has claws for hands but can fix things. And shoot, PK mentioned they call him like the mechanic, and the Doctor's like, well, that's an apt name because his species is really good at fixing things. And I was like, well, that's kind of a little bit racist too.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess you can make massive generalizations like that. You know, like how the human race is really good at messing things up.
I knew where that was going as soon as you started.
Yeah, I saw this thing. I don't remember what it was for. But it was just some comment or post on something where it was like, man, if you think the villain in this is bad, just remember that humans are actively trying to save the planet and destroying it in the process. Or something like that. It was worded more funny in a more funny way than how I said it. But yeah.
Well, I mean, Doctor Who's always had a history of being vaguely racist.
And sometimes not so vaguely racist.
They actually addressed that, like, really head-on in the episode of the reboot that aired yesterday for when we're recording this, but a week ago for when this goes out.
Thin ice? How the show's been walking on thin ice for the entire run.
No, it's just there's a racist dude and the Doctor punches him in the face for being racist, so...
well, I mean, in some ways that's kind of messed up because, people are allowed to be racist. It's not a good thing, but can't just go around punching people in the face for their views.
They went back to, like, Regency era England when slavery was still a thing, so... This dude wasn't, like, modern-day coded racism. This dude was, like, full-blown racist.
I mean, I know this is, like, sort of defending racism, which obviously I don't agree with, but I mean, even if you're not a coded racist, even if you're a flat out blatant racist, you can't just go punch people in the face for that.
That's a fair point. You shouldn't really punch anyone in the face. I don't really condone violence.
Yeah, just want to point out that I'm not trying to condone racism here.
But at the same time, the way in which it was presented was the guy was directly attacking the Doctor's companion.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it was in a good context in the episode, which we'll get to in 3 years.
It wasn't like the Doctor just walked up to the dude and punched him in the face. Yeah. Also, 2.5 years, by the way, I've calculated.
Not if we keep September adding things like those per-tweet things we might add, because a couple people requested them, including Brendan and Ernest Malley.
Not if we shove things in.
If that is your real name. I don't know if that's his real name. Sounds like a real name.
Some people use fake names on Twitter, so...
Yeah, like me. My name's
Trust Your Doctor on Twitter.
That's my real name. It's on my birth certificate. Trust Doctor, and my middle name's Yor. Yeah, my parents hated me.
I was going to say, that kind of sucks.
Anyway, I'm clearly just talking about whatever comes to mind because I don't know what happened in part 2.
Well, see, it's all kind of related because the Doctor doesn't really know what happens in part 2 either, because at this point he builds this device that cuts down the walls between the cells, but doesn't remove the wall between the cell and the hallway. So he's like combined all the cells into one.
Yeah, there's this line like, I didn't remove it, I just made it invisible and intangible. And I'm like, wait, what?
Isn't that just removing it? Yeah, the Toymaker's like projecting these walls, which is why they're not really there. And that's why the Doctor can remove them.
Yeah, that's something that I guess, to me at least, had the potential to be turned into a really cool game, like a maze where you don't know if the walls are real or not, or something like that. Would be really unfair for the people playing it, probably, but whatever.
Yeah, but when has the Toymaker ever been Faye?
Yeah.
So now, so Perry's there now. She just makes it to the cell with Kevin. And so Kevin is totally in on it with the Toymaker. Whoa, surprise.
Well, they hint at it in
they hint at it
because super obvious, because his voice is like all distorted. And Perry's like, "Did you say something?" He's like, no.
Well, they also hint at it that he got shot in the arm, and then like 2 minutes later, Perry's like, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm fine."
Yeah, he heals super fast.
She's like, "But you just got shot in the arm." He's like, yeah, it's better now. Just a flesh wound." So the Doctor's like, well, I'm going to have to go play the game. So, Perry, the mechanic's going to need a hand. Quite literally, he's going to need a hand. Perry's like, okay. So the Doctor goes to play the game, and then Perry spends 10 minutes going, wonder what the Doctor meant. And then she's like, oh yeah, PX, you need to give the mechanic your hand. Like, wow, God, Perry, how more obvious could the Doctor have made it?
Yeah, well, they always portrayed Perry as being kind of stupid, so...
I feel kind of bad for the way they're portraying her here.
Yeah.
Like, the way they portrayed it was the Doctor, like, said he's going to need a hand, literally.
Wink, wink, hand.
Like, you could imagine that that's what he was doing on the screen, was hand, and then pointing at XP's hand, and Perry doesn't get it, and I'm like... That's such a diminutive thing to do to Perry. I mean, not that Perry, like, was ever that thrilling of a character, but...
Was ever good. Was ever a necessary part of the show. Was ever a great companion.
It still kind of sucks,
was ever treated well by any of the scripts.
That's what I'm saying. It kind of sucks that that they didn't, like, clean that up when they adapted this to audio, but I guess they, like, took as much of the original script as they could, so...
Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't think they should have cleaned it up, really. I mean, was portraying Perry in a completely new way any better? I don't think so.
I guess it depends on how they're portraying her in the audio dramas, and if they've given her, like, actual character development to get more intelligent. Which obviously I don't know, so...
I mean, I don't think it's even the fault that, like, oh yeah, Perry's really dumb. I just think it's just the script's treating her that way. Maybe, I don't know. It's just my idea. But, yeah, it would be really cool to have an actual, good Perry arc in any of these audios. I don't know if that exists or not, but...
Probably, because Big Finish actually takes pride and care in their scripts. I think Nicola Bryant even mentioned this, like, on the interview. She's like, I'm used to such a high quality caliber of scripts from Big Finish, so I really didn't know how they were going to adapt the script from 1986 for audio, because I'm used to such good scripts from Big Finish.
Yeah, that's something that we should probably listen to, / I guess I'm looking forward to now is, actual good Perry stories, considering how much everyone who worked on the show, how much they hated her with how her character went in the actual TV series.
Yeah, it's odd to me that all these people hated Perry's character when they were the ones who were driving Perry's character in that direction.
But anyway, that's not this story.
Yeah, no. Not yet, anyway. So the Doctor's playing this video game that they never describe on audio, which is fine. They didn't need to.
Yeah, I just imagined him being like one of those hardcore people who set records on... like Pac-Man and Donkey Kong and stuff. Like in the zone, man.
So Spotify plays these in the tracks from the CD version. So I forgot to turn off the shuffle feature when I started this. So it played the first track of part 1, which is the opening theme in Doctor and Perry land in Blackpool. And then it cut to like track 10 of part 2, where the Doctor's like, yeah, I'm going to beat you, Toymaker. And I was like, well, this is an interesting setup. And I was like, wait a minute.
Oh God.
Yeah, so that was confusing for a bit. Anyway, the Doctor sets the new high score, obviously, because it's only 2 parts and there's 10 minutes left in the story. And then Perry and the mechanic and PX activate the device that traps the toy maker in like a box.
I didn't get. I didn't get what I got vaguely that it did something incomprehensible, I guess, but I was like, yeah, whatever.
Usual plot device thing. The Doctor, the Sixth Doctor, does his usual really arrogant line of victory where he's like, "I'm against caging even the most wild beast toy maker, but for you, there's no other option."
But the Time Lord gave him 3 options, and caging is the only one left.
Oh, jeez.
Never forget.
Never forget that Time Lord who gave instructions. He's the
best character of the Fourth
real
Doctor.
hero of this show. Bring him back.
Along with the chef. Bring back the chef.
Yeah, the Doctor has this line at some point too that the Time Lords are trying to trace the Celestial Toymaker's time interventions through history, but they got bored of all of his games, so they stopped. But yeah, that line about not wanting to cage a beast but being okay with it for the Toymaker, to me, was just another one of those lines that really makes me hate the things they did with the Sixth Doctor on the show. So, anyway, there's not much more to say about that line. And yeah, so Perry says this really long thing about how the Doctor should take the box away and take it to another planet where people aren't going to accidentally open it and release the Toymaker into the wild because the Toymaker can't escape from the inside.
I'm sure that's going to work.
Yeah, and Kevin decides to start his own arcade, and that's how it ends.
Really? I didn't remember that. He decides to
Kevin.
start his own arcade.
One of the guys is like, "I'm going to start my own arcade," and the Doc's like, "Remember, start from the top." I was like, what does that even mean? Trickle-down economics. The Doctor is a supporter of trickle-down economics. That's what it means.
This was during the Reagan era. I think.
Yeah, would have been the Reagan era. Reagan would have been elected in 1980.
As we all know, that completely worked out.
Well, for a solid month or so.
Still not feeling the effects of it today. Nope.
Even if we weren't, we will be soon.
Anyway, yeah. So, well, we didn't mention the big reveal that the Toymaker is the Vortex. He's not controlling the Vortex or whatever this line was.
Yeah, I think
is the Vortex. Didn't follow up on that line at all. It was sort of just there and didn't really play into anything at all.
Yeah, I kind of feel like in this context, it just meant he was the time vortex that trapped the Doctor here, and he's not actually just all of time and space combined. Although maybe he is. He is a celestial being of immense power.
Yeah, but I mean, whatever the case, it's not a big part of the story, really. It's just sort of there, and it was sort of positioned in the way that, like, oh yeah, this is going to be a big plot twist, but I don't know, I don't really think it was.
Yeah, and David Bailey's delivery of it kind of makes it seem like it was supposed to be this really big revelation, but I think part of why it doesn't pay off is that it's at a weird place in part 2. It's like kind of in the middle of part 2 with nothing to follow, and also the Doctor just doesn't react to it at all.
Yeah, nobody really does anything with it. It doesn't play into the rest of the story.
Yeah, like the Doctor seems completely nonplussed at it. He's like, okay, cool. I still really like the Celestial Toymaker in concept. I feel like he's an interesting villain against the Doctor, and I think Colin Baker made this really good point in the interview where he thinks that villains like the Master, the Rani, or the Monk, or the Celestial Toymaker that are individual people are always more tricky for the Doctor to go up against because he's matching wits one-on-one against someone.
Yeah, I mean, everyone loves a good, like, rival or foil type character rather than, like, the Daleks or the Cybermen or the Ice Warriors.
And that's kind of why I like the Celestial Toymaker, because he's like so much more powerful than the Doctor, but the Doctor has to use his wits to try, outwit this being, kind of like Fenric back when the Seventh Doctor faced off against him in the Curse of Fenric, I guess. But I didn't really do anything with him.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, one of the things, I guess one of the problems I had with this is, the Celestial Toymaker was one of the only villains to almost defeat the first Doctor.
Yeah.
And then here he seemed less powerful. I think that's partially an effect of the more the villain keeps showing up, the less powerful they seem and the less menacing they seem.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's also a fault of the script.
Yeah, because the script, I don't think, took what is the most interesting part of the Toymaker's character, is that while he has all of this immense power, he
focuses
likes
on
to play games. They do a tiny bit with it in this story, where the Celestial Toymaker mentions that he created part of the universe with other older beings, and then he got bored of that, so he started destroying them. But he said destruction without meaning is just as boring as creation without meaning, which is why he turned his mind to games. But they don't do anything with it. They don't give the Doctor some sort of moral quandary to deal with. They don't make the Doctor have some sort of big discussion with the Toymaker about it, like they do with other villains like Davros and the Master. That the Doctor usually has at least one of their appearances. There's a kind of a face-off between the ideologies.
Yeah, I mean, which usually works to varying extents, depending on who it is, who's writing it, what story it's in, whatever.
Yeah, but I think those moral face-offs are what makes the individual characters so interesting, because it's difficult to do that with here's all of the Daleks, have the Doctor's morals face off against all of the Daleks, which is kind of why they introduced Davros, because it gave them a character who acted as a mouthpiece for that ideology.
Yeah, that's not the full extent of Davros's character, I don't think, but yeah, it's true.
But yeah, they do bring the Toymaker back in what I think is a more interesting setup for the story. They bring him back in one of the companion chronicles with Charlie for the 8th Doctor, and the Doctor's been turned into a doll, so Charlie has to go through the Celestial Toy Room with the Toymaker taunting her to win the game to get the Doctor turned back into a
yeah. See,
being.
That's the kind of thing that you maybe want the Toymaker to do.
Yeah,
sort of more of a callback to his original setup as a character. More than this maybe.
And I'm sure that's interesting, but for this, and they actually bring him back sort of to face off against the 7th Doctor in a story called The Magic Mousetrap.
And they got sued by Disney. No.
Well, there was a funny thing with The Magic Mousetrap, is that it was supposed to feature Agatha Christie, because, I don't know if you knew this, but Agatha Christie went missing for a couple months.
No, I didn't know that.
So she mysteriously disappeared, and then she showed up on a beach somewhere.
Weird, man.
And
maybe she got abducted by aliens.
That was going to be featured in the Magic Mousetrap audio, but just before they started recording it, the reboot released an episode that dealt with that disappearance, so they had to write out all the Agatha Christie parts before they recorded it. But yeah, I just wish they'd do something interesting with the Toymaker, like that other audio, the Companion Chronicles, because that one sounds interesting.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they completely mess up the execution. I don't know.
I mean, maybe, but that's for that one, that'll be one of the original scripts, so they can work it from start to finish, whereas this was apparently Graham Williams' wife, when they went to her to ask for permission to do this story because they wanted to get permission from the estate, she didn't even know the story existed and didn't have a copy of the script on her. So they had to bring her a copy of the script they had acquired. I don't know how, because they didn't say how they acquired it, but they had acquired a copy of the script and they had to take it to Graham Williams' wife, who then read it and gave them permission to do it. But I thought that was interesting. Yeah, so I guess that's that.
Yeah.
The Nightmare Fair.
Yep.
You can email us at thedoctordecoratevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your Celestial Toymaker thoughts. There's that book that features him. It's a 5th Doctor book that also features him, the Master, and the Rani, I think, and it's been called one of the worst Doctor Who books ever written. Much like your choice for the 8th Doctor book.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of a problem when there's usually sort of a problem when you start introducing too many villains.
Yeah.
Unless you have maybe the Doctor and Master teaming up against the Rani and the Celestial Toymaker. Maybe it would be the Doctor and the Rani. I don't know.
Honestly, I don't know.
It's probably not that though, so hey, I don't know.
Yeah, that one also reveals that the Master, the Ronnie, and the Doctor and the Monk are all in the same class at Gallifrey Academy, with the War Chief as well.
Well, that's something you'd like to think anyway. I mean, maybe not
that's true.
maybe not the War Chief. You might not remember the War Chief, but
anyway, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and YouTube. All at Trust Your Doctor. Be sure to check out last week's episode featuring Flight Through Entirety.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome. Also, check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook, and check us out on Twitter at TYD Podcast, and follow us on Twitter. And next week, we're listening to Phantasmagoria. But until then, the end.